Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. This morning, we're having an office hour session on failure analysis and sort of like insights broadly. And yeah, I think it's going to be good to talk about this because I think not enough people really understand that this tool is available to them with Sauce Labs. It's part of a push towards observability that we're making, and honestly, people ask us all the time, like, "What are y'all doing with AI?" AI is this huge thing that everyone talks about. Now, honestly, this is the answer at the moment to what we're doing with AI is a whole lot of companies out there, a whole lot of organizations are trying to push this concept of how can we um, automate the creation of test scripts, and it's like it's a lot more difficult than I think people think. And there's a whole bunch of other companies out there doing it. So we're kind of like watching the market, seeing who we think has got the answer right. And this right here, this is how we're applying AI and machine learning and stuff like that. Because at least this is my personal opinion. This is not a sauce opinion, but personal opinion is that um, it's better to have AI look at what's already happened and give you analysis as opposed to try to replicate the human brain and create intent signals and stuff like that. So um, we do have some work going on in both areas, but this is the area that we're able to push a little bit sooner. Um, Anyway, so my name is Marcus Merrill. I'll be your host today. I've been in the quality assurance space. This is my 25th anniversary in testing, test automation, and and I was a customer of Sauce Labs for 8 years before I came here, and I've been here now for six. So 14 of the 15 years that Sauce Labs has been around, I've been involved with it in some way or another. And I'm also on the Selenium Project Leadership Committee. So I've been around the Selenium world since 2008. Yeah, so slightly longer than the Sauce Labs world. So if there are any questions at any point, feel free to chat. Feel free to take yourself off of mute. Also, feel free to tell me if I don't know how to operate Zoom and you actually can't take yourself off mute because there may be some beeps and boops I can do here that will make that work. I truthfully don't know. We'll see. I will try to keep up with comments and questions as I can. But otherwise, we should get into it. Any questions before we start? I'm going to give you 10 seconds. I'm not wearing a watch, but I'm going to pretend to look at my watch. Okay, great. Let's talk a little bit about the Sauce Labs platform for testing, because that's what we're in, that's what we're using. For a long time, Sauce Labs was simply virtual machines that you could run Selenium tests on. And what differentiates that between a Selenium cloud and a compute cloud like AWS, EC2, or Azure DevOps, something like that, is the fact that rather than having a virtual machine that you need to spin up and then teach it what you want to do with it, like AWS just gives you a machine and says, "All right, here's a machine, do whatever you want." Sauce Labs brings up a machine with a browser based on what you ask for. So if you ask for Chrome version 120 or 130, it gives you exactly that. Same with Safari, same with all others. Um, sorry, I'll see this question from Malik. I will try to address that one in a bit. I'm going to get through this material here. Any specific questions, I'll be glad to take after we sort of do it. I'm going to do like 10 minutes of presentation and then show you some stuff, and then absolutely we'll break into more free form uh, questions and stuff like that. So yeah, Sauce brings up a browser that's specifically intended to receive Selenium protocol, Selenium instructions, and then give you the results. And for many, many years, all it was that it would give you results and give you a video and tell you what's going on. What we've been doing over the past few years is adding security certification. So, 8 years ago, nobody in this space had any sort of security certifications. We've now got the most of any in the industry. And we also have the most scalable infrastructure in the industry. It's built for enterprise customers. We have one customer in particular, for example, who runs 1.4 million tests per day on the Sauce Labs cloud because it is just absolutely scalable, durable, and handles just about anything you can throw at it. The mission from now, 24, 25, is to create the most extensible test framework tool, infrastructure tool that we possibly can through the creation of APIs and integration tools and API contracts that allow you to put what you want into the Sauce Cloud and take what you need out of the data. And today's session is about failure analysis as part of that. That's every logo on this little strip right here is supported by Sauce Labs. Some have bespoke integrations that really make it sing. Some are just ways you can interact with the tool, and we're adding more and more all the time. By default, the capabilities that we offer is the ability to do functional testing, mobile, web, live, exploratory. And then we've added the capability to do visual testing. And then we've also got an integration which allows you to see crashes and errors subcutaneously, like below the surface of what's going on in your application. This is something that may not everyone may not know about, but if you run a test on a mobile native web app and it has a crash under the surface in a way that doesn't actually show itself in the user interface, there's a good chance that your Appium test won't see it. But we actually have crash and error reporting that surfaces this kind of error that you may not know about. We actually have a fair number of tests that are marked as passing inside our cloud that actually show crashes and stack traces that the user didn't even know about. So it's kind of this interesting capability where we built an SDK underneath that instruments the app underneath the test and tells you about some of the stuff going on under, which is a pretty cool capability. Probably a different set of office hours to talk about that. And then what we're trying to do is build extensibility in the product so that we don't have to become experts in the kind of testing you're trying to do in order to be able to offer a platform that supports it. The one example is accessibility testing. We have the ability to support accessibility testing through tooling and stuff like that, but we are not providing the accessibility testing itself. We simply support it through integrations with DQ and a couple of other partners. And we're working on the same thing with localization, internationalization, as well as security testing, synthetic monitoring, other kinds of testing like that. And then what we're going to talk about today is the fact that since we see all of this data in our data center, it's all there. So under that umbrella, we're able to tell you things that you didn't know, not only about your tests, but about your software. And the metaphor that I always like to use about this is that imagine you have a Roomba that's running, vacuuming up all the stuff in your living room. And once you're done with the Roomba, it runs for an hour and it tells you, I ran for 63 minutes. I picked up 12 ounces of debris. I emptied the bin twice. I used this many kilowatt hours of battery or something like that. And here's a map of the space that I did and the areas I could and could not reach. And I always think, okay, that's cool. I know how well the Roomba is operating. What I want to know is what's going on in my house. So I wish that the Roomba would tell me, I picked up a bunch of hair samples. You and your wife seem to be fine, but you have 3 cats and the black one is pregnant. I don't know if you knew that or not. And then would imagine if the Roomba could then give you regular updates on the cat's pregnancy and how it's going or something like that. What I'm getting at is I want you to be able to run a test on Sauce Labs and for it to say there's an API that's returning a different contract value than it did last week. You're seeing element not found, but what's actually happening is that an API got misdeployed based on what we've seen in the past, and uh, this is the endpoint that's broken now, and here's the we don't know how to fix it, but we can at least guide you towards understanding what happened that may cause this test to fail. What I'm going to show you today is sort of the first step of that. It's not actually telling you about the API, but it is going to tell you where it is seeing errors sort of all around your test suites. Let me check the chat real quick. Great. Um, this is a slide that we'll include when we send out this thing, just sort of some good. What we're trying to focus on at Sauce right now is helping you with efficiency, velocity, and risk management. And the failure analysis tool falls under risk management quality overall quality. Also helps with efficiency because it helps you understand if you have a whole bunch of failures suddenly, here's where you get started with the work. Because I think everyone who's running a suite of automated tests sees this kind of thing all the time, where you walk in the morning and you ran 1,000 tests last night and suddenly 200 of them are failing. Well, there's a good chance that it's a single underlying cause for at least most of those tests that's caused them to fail suddenly. And that's what we're heading towards here, is getting you to be more efficient in how you analyze that kind of a test. So Sauce Insights, it's available on the user interface, and I'll show that live here in a bit. Tells you everything, a lot of sort of like I said, it tells you how efficiently you're doing testing, tells you how efficiently you're using the Sauce Labs platform. And you can use filters to sort and look at particular things, and I'll show that here in a bit. Here are the different features that are available via Insights. You can get an overview of the different jobs that are happening, job history. This also goes to build history, and unfortunately I don't have data that shows build level work, so I won't be able to show that today, but I can at least talk about it a little bit. It'll also show trends, like based on the platforms that you're trying to test. Here's what you've tested. Maybe you don't know that you actually haven't been testing on Safari lately, or that. And this is one thing I will show today, is that I noticed that I have a whole lot of failures, but they're all centered around a Safari browser, not around a particular problem with the website, something like that. And then we'll tell you about usage as well as failure analysis, which I'll show today. What we're trying to get at is, if you run a whole bunch of tests on Sauce Labs, we want to be able to pinpoint that this is a pattern of a failure that we're seeing across multiple tests, or in a single test multiple times. So what this screenshot is showing you, that this particular test that we're looking at has seen the failure of this particular find element call being made 44% of the time over the past month or so. And so we're using machine learning, where there's a lot of work that has to go into like deduplication and getting rid of some strings and hanging on to some strings within a stack trace to understand exactly what's going on with it. We're using machine learning for all that to make sure that we are actually able to identify these patterns in a way that's kind of repeatable, and that way you have confidence that when we tell you that there's a failure pattern over a certain number of tests, if you fix that one failure pattern, there's a good chance that 44% of your tests will start passing again, or at least they'll get to the next point of failure, which I think we all know what that's like. Now, one of the basic requirements in order to use failure analysis is that you have to name your tests, and you don't have to use tags or builds, but you have to name them, and you have to pass or fail of your test results. So what I mean by that is, and I would actually love to know how many people know this so far, like a show of hands or something. If you run a test on Sauce Labs, does Sauce Labs know whether or not it passed or failed? Be curious to know if anyone in the chat will have an answer. Chris, can you come off mute and talk, or do you not want to, or you want to type your answer? What do you think? If it doesn't work, I'm really sorry. I don't know how to operate Zoom webinar. Um, so, I haven't allowed to talk button. Let me do that. Get that. Chris, do you want to say something, or you want to not? You can lower your hand if you don't want to say anything. Well, I'm sorry. I don't know how to operate this thing. Um, let me give you the answer. If Yeah, sorry, Chris. So
Oh,
yeah,
this might
I can
be.
hear you. Yeah.
Oh, yay. Okay.
Hey, great.
So
All right.
yeah. One more time on the question.
So what I'm wondering is, when you run a test on Sauce Labs and you don't pass in test results, does Sauce know if the test failed or not?
No, it doesn't necessarily. From what I've seen, I call a function to tell it that the test
Hmm.
has failed. I used to
Yeah.
do it through the API, and now there's a way of doing the like a comment sort of thing
Hmm.
that sets that up.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. There's two ways. There's the REST API, and then there's the JavaScript executor.
Right.
Um, so the way, so what we can tell without a sense of without you passing it in, we can tell whether or not it completed all of its commands, or threw an error or didn't complete its list of commands. So we understand you sent a command that said find element or click element. We know whether or not that completed, and then you shut down the driver. So it completed. We still don't know if it passed. And here's why. If I if I'm sending a command that says find element and then I say get attribute text, I'm sending you, so what Sauce Labs does is it will send you back the text of that element. But on your client side, you are calling an assertion that says compare this text to this other text and make sure that they match. We don't ever see the result of that assertion. We don't know if it passed or not. We don't know if your human judgment was able to validate on this. Why? Because you didn't tell it. Like that operation is completely happening on your side. It's not a browser command. It's an assertion that's a comparison that's being made on the client side. So if you say find element and we couldn't find the element, and we throw an error and then we shut the driver down, then we say, well, there was an error. Or if we say open this URL and there was a 401 or 404, something like that, and then you shut down the driver, we know there was a problem. Something happened. Or if something in the very, very rare case where something happens where with like latency causing particular kind of problem, something like that. Anything, any unexpected behavior that prevents a WebDriver command from being executed properly will cause an error state to the test. But without you telling us that it failed, we don't know whether or not it failed. If all the commands got completed. Now, there's another state that thing you can get into which is called command or test did not see a command for 90 seconds, which is actually a fairly common error we see, and that's just when people don't properly close out the WebDriver session, and that is that's not a topic for today, but that's just something I want to entreat. If you see that error a lot, there's a good chance that your driver cleanup code isn't being called or isn't completing successfully. Um, so here's how you send metadata, and this is I apologize in advance. This is all Java. Give me a chat. Give me a sense in the chat of the languages that we're all using here. Everyone, type in the language you're using. I'd love to get an answer, an idea of what we're seeing. Yay, Java! All right, I'm a Java guy, so I'm all biased. Ruby, WebDriver, IO. That's awesome. C Sharp, Python. Do we have any JavaScript in the house? Like that's the one we're missing. Cool. The good news is that TypeScript. Dang, that's awesome. TypeScript, does that mean you're using Playwright, Benjamin? Curious. Um, let's see. Then good news is the C Sharp code is going to look almost identical to this right here. TypeScript with Test Cafe, TypeScript with WebDriver IO. That's awesome. All right, cool. Very cool. So I don't see pure JavaScript. I see TypeScript with WebDriver IO. I love to see it because I'm a Java guy, right? So I like strongly typed languages. Um, Honestly, TypeScript's actually quite a blind spot for me. I need to start picking it up. I haven't ever been paid professionally to write TypeScript, so I never adopted it. So yeah, you need to take advantage of unique test names. That way, Sauce Labs can actually do the comparison and the analysis. They can say this test, which I know by name because you told me the name of this test, because there's absolutely no way for Sauce Labs to figure out the name of a test unless you tell it what it is. I had the idea a while back to use generative AI to do that, but like it just feels like using a sledgehammer to kill a fly. You should just pass the name in. So then yeah, leverage tags. I think that's a good way of organizing information. Passing in pass fail information. So instead of saying completed, we'll actually say passed. Very useful. Um,